Would you stand as you're able, please, for the reading this morning, which comes from the 10th chapter of John, verses 22 through 30. The time came for the festival of dedication in Jerusalem. It was winter, and Jesus was in the temple, walking in the covered porch named for Solomon. The Jewish opposition circled around him and asked, "How long will you test our patience? If you are the Christ, tell us plainly." Jesus answered, "I have told you, but you don't believe. The works I do in my Father's name testify about me, but you don't believe because you don't belong to my sheep. My sheep listen to my voice. I know them and they follow me. I give them eternal life. They will never die, and no one will snatch them from my hand. My Father, who has given them to me, is greater than all, and no one is able to snatch them from my Father's hand. I and the Father are one." The word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God.
Well, today we celebrate the mothers. And so really glad that all the mothers are here this morning. And I sometimes wonder if us guys just don't really get it. You know, how tough it is sometimes to be a mom. You know, and so we bring flowers and we offer thanks. And I know that's just not enough, you know, for all that the mothers and mother figures have given to us over the years. And we're really grateful. You know, along the lines of just not getting it, I am reminded of a story when John and I were first dating. And we'd been dating for a little while. And so we were going to go to the prom. So Nantahala Center was having a staff prom. So we all got dressed up. Me and a friend of mine, we went over. We rented tuxes and everything. So Joanna got all dressed up, and the women would trade dresses around, and so everybody got all dolled up, right? And so we'd all gotten dressed up, and I came to meet her. And you've got to remember that the river community is a little different than maybe some of the other communities. And so typically you don't wear a lot of makeup, right? You know, and you just don't do a lot of fancy stuff. And I remember showing up, and here she was, and she had, you know, eye makeup and eyeshadow and stuff like that. And I looked at her and went, "You got on I do." That's what she said. You know, sometimes us guys, we just don't get it right. And somehow, over the years, she's put up with this nonsense for over 30 years now, for sure. But in my defense, I grew up on a farm, and you know, there wasn't a whole lot of makeup wearing out there either, and you know, amongst the chickens and the cows and all that, but it was still, I was not maybe as aware as I should have been with how much time and effort that she put into it. I was reading an article this morning in the newspaper about a young woman who had been going through some similar issues at work, and she would wear makeup, and one of her coworkers was just giving her down the road about it. And so one day she decided, all right, well, I'm just going to fix this. And so what she decided, you know, he was just like, "You just got to quit wearing that stuff." And she says, "All right." Well, and she just lays it on even thicker, right? And so she takes the time to really, and she even posted up several photos and stuff of, you know, of making the eyeshadow a little more extreme than she would have made. You know, did one with rainbow and all that kind of stuff, and really got him all worked up. But I think she made her point. But the cool thing was, is she was explaining that the reason that she enjoys putting on makeup is it actually was a time for her to kind of do a couple things. Is it was her time to be kind of reflective and just kind of just get lost in putting on the makeup. But it was also, especially with the eyeshadow and some of the other things, It gave her an outlet for creativity, right? And we see that in different ways, and sometimes we don't quite understand that. And I'm sure that was one of the things that this young man was going through at her work and was giving her a hard time about it. He just didn't understand what she was able to get out of that and the way that she could express her creativity and other things without really hurting anybody else. And I wonder if maybe that's one of the things that Jesus felt too when he was faced yet again with Jewish leaders that surrounded him. Him also being a Jewish leader, right? Being a rabbi, so it wasn't it's those Jews, those Jewish leaders. He was one. But the kind of the officials stayed on him all the time, didn't they? They didn't quite understand Jesus. But they were expecting a Messiah, and they were expecting somebody to come in and swoop to the rescue is what they had hoped. That they would come in, that whoever this Messiah is would come in and throw off this Roman government and would free the Jews, and they would be under their own control again. Just them and God's people, and that was the way they saw it. That wasn't exactly the way that Jesus seemed to see it. It wasn't the way that Jesus seemed to see the people. And the Jewish leaders, on this occasion, seemed to corral Jesus and said, "All right, Jesus, tell us the truth. Are you the Messiah or not?" And Jesus says, "Guys, it's just not that hard. I mean, look at all the things that I've done. Look at the works is the word that was used. Look at these things. Look at the ways that I've healed, the ways that I've fed people, the way that I've reached out and touched those that are the least, the last, and the lost, and helped other folks out. Who do you say that I am? Who do you think I am?" They just weren't getting it. And then when Jesus told them, "I and the Father are one," they didn't want to hear it, did they? They were going to stone him. But we've been there, right? We've been there a time or two when we didn't really understand what the other person was saying, and we thought to ourselves, "Well, I never." My college roommates used to say, "Oh, I bet you have." And he wasn't wrong. But that's what the Jewish leaders were telling Jesus, because they didn't understand what he was doing. Why would he sit with these sinners? Why would he sit with these people that Jesus was sitting with? Why would he invite in those that were outcasts in every sense of the word from the in crowd? You see, these guys, the Jewish leaders, they wanted to be with the in crowd. They were used to being the cool kids on the block, and then Jesus didn't fit that mold. Now, if he was a real Messiah, he'd be hanging out with the cool kids. He wouldn't be bringing in these guys that are outcasts, these that are literally on the outside of society, where he often met them on his way into town and healed, spoke fresh life into them, and invited them to dinner quite often. That's not what these Jewish leaders wanted to hear. And they just couldn't understand it. And sometimes we do that, though, don't we? We get so wrapped up in certain perspectives, like maybe my farm perspective. Maybe they were looking at Jesus and saying, "You've got on eye goop." because they just didn't quite understand what he was saying, what he was doing, how he was demonstrating that he was one with the Father. I find it fascinating and heartbreaking all at the same time. Because that story reminds me of when Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead. You know, several of these Jewish leaders had been there, and they were there comforting the family as they should have been doing. And so Jesus shows up after Lazarus was dead. Where were you when you should have been here healing on people? But Jesus shows up. And he calls Lazarus out of the tomb. After being dead for 4 days, Lazarus was stinking. But rather than these folks that witnessed that, now some went, this is it. We're on this bandwagon, folks. We're doing this. But there were some that saw that and said, oh, I'm telling. I'm going to go tell. And they didn't believe. Even after that. Sadly, it's easy to come with preconceived notions about who Jesus is and who Jesus is supposed to see and who Jesus is supposed to heal and what day he's supposed to heal on and where he's supposed to heal. But it seems like Jesus had nothing to do with that. Jesus seems to be the one that invites everybody to the table and then gathers them as his sheep. And he's the good shepherd, watching over, providing for, protecting his sheep. And even, in Jesus' own words, giving them eternal life. And it's easy to think of this eternal life as something that's by and by, right? That it's coming. One day we'll get through this. And it'll all be better because we've been promised eternal life. But folks, it's a both and. Yes, there is that. But it also means that we have eternal life today. That if we live like Jesus lived, if we love like Jesus loved, we are experiencing God's kingdom. We are experiencing true eternal life here and now. How cool is that? And Jesus wanted the Jewish rulers to recognize that, to kind of see through their fog and see through their preconceived notions. Some did, and some didn't. I believe Jesus spoke the truth into these people's lives, and then dared them to follow him. I think he spoke into everybody's truth into everybody's life and dared them to follow him. Dares aren't always easy. In fact, they often are not easy, are they? Dares can be scary. Dares can be hard. And Jesus knew it. Jesus dared those that would be willing to follow him to love their enemies. What? Jesus dared them to love those that are ostracized, those that are outcast, to reach out and be shepherds themselves to people on the outside. You see, Jesus dares us to follow him, no matter what it takes, whether it's easy or hard. Jesus gives us the truth and then dares us to follow. What if? What if we heard Jesus' words afresh today? These words of truth, and followed him, whether it's easy or hard.